pray. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your many blessings, God. We thank you for your guidance and the strength that you give us, God. We just ask today that as we meet that you give us extra measure of that, Lord, that you help us to make good decisions, wise decisions, God, and the best decisions for the people of this county. We do continue to ask your blessings on our people, on our county, on our state, and on our country, Lord. Just be with us, guide us and direct us in all that we do. These things we ask in your name. Amen.
Thank you. We will now call the special session of the Swain County Commissioners to order under General Statute 143-318.12 to order. Gunnar, if you would, please.
Place the colors. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, sir. A special call meeting of the commissioners. We do not have a standard. I guess we have a standard, but not a printed agenda for the day. For those of you who are here, and welcome, Superintendent, we will hear from the Superintendent first. And then if there are any persons who would like to speak, we will entertain them. And then we will get to the options and the purpose of this meeting following that. Any other comments, Commissioners? Okay. Superintendent Sale.
Here this morning is to follow up on the plans for the school. I have two documents for you. This is a calendar of the school system for the remainder of this school year, the 1920 school year. The reason I bring that to you, I believe that since the last time that I met with you, I think, the governor declared that our school year would be finished with remote learning. That means the students will not be back into the classrooms. There are 3 dates on this calendar that I want to draw your attention to. And after that, if you have any questions that you would like to ask about anything else on there or anything in general, I'll be happy to answer them. May 22nd will be our last day of instruction. All of our instruction has been delivered either digitally or through paper packets for students. The reason that we're closing instruction on May 22nd is because we need an opportunity for parents and students to bring their technology in. We have approximately 80% of our students, maybe 90% of our students right now, who have digital devices at home. And we need to bring those in so that we can catalog those, so that we can look at them again to see if they need to have any repairs, because there will be the need for those again during the next school year. We're going to have a really quick turnaround on that, because according to legislation that was approved on Saturday in Raleigh, it's looking like we're going to have some summer programs for literacy. And some of the language states that some of those programs may have to be in June. I don't know all the specifics about that yet, but we're going to have to have that technology ready for our students again very quickly. Our final feeding day, when we will actually be transporting food out into the community, will be June the 3rd. The way that we see it right now, funding has been approved by the state for us to continue that particular type of feeding through the end of the school year. There is a summer feeding program, but it runs a little bit differently, and we have not traditionally transported food into the community. It's been more of a pickup. I don't know if we'll be able to run transportation this summer or not. Of course, that is a funding issue that would need to come through the state. We're looking into that right now. The other critical date for the community right now is June the 6th. And that has to do with what we have assumed would be graduation. That would be the typical graduation day for Swain County schools. Obviously, we can't have mass gatherings because we're probably at least going to be in phase 1 and perhaps phase 2 of the governor's plan. And even in phase 2, I doubt that he's going to open up gatherings to the number that we would have at graduation normally. So what our high school administration staff has done is put together a proposed plan where there would be the opportunity to have a person-to-person diploma handoff in the Performing Arts Center, and after that, a parade that goes through town. We are, at this very moment, contacting every senior in the high school to ask what their availability would be then, and there has been a request from the community to extend that graduation up into late July or early August, so that perhaps we could have a mass gathering. So our principal and her staff are looking into that. That's very complicated because we don't know who will be in town and who won't be in town at that point. So that's why she's having communication with them right now. So what you have in your hand is a proposed plan that's subject to change midweek or at the end of the week. We're hoping to have something to take to the school board next Monday, which is our next school board meeting, I believe, correct? I think so. I wanted to share those plans with you, though, in our thought processes, and offer myself for any questions or any suggestions from you.
Superintendent, how long will you wait before you change this from the date you now have set until up throughout the summer?
Mr. Bushyhead, I believe that we will be able to have a decision, a finalized decision on that within 10 days. We'll have the information that we need by then, and we'll be able to have discussion in the school board meeting next Monday night to make sure that everyone is of agreement on the same page. And as soon as we have a final date, we will publicize that. Any other questions? Thank you for your time today, gentlemen. Very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. It appears that we have 5 persons who have signed up to speak to us. Sheriff, if I can impose on you to bring these people in, or whomever you want to do that.
Who do you want first? You want them all or one at a time?
No, we want them one at a time, please, and however you want to do it. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, sir. Would you state your name, please, for the record?
Sure. My name is Jesse Shows. I live here in Bryson City.
Okay, go ahead. You've got the floor.
Thank you. Gentlemen, I'd like to begin today by acknowledging that the coronavirus has presented this board with a unique and extraordinary set of circumstances. Developing the proper course of action is no small feat, especially as there's been no meaningful precedent or experience to follow. This event has been thrust upon you, and you have, in the largest measure, done a fine job in response. However, as in all things, there should be room for critique, reflection, and reconsideration. There's been a great deal of debate as to the role of government, what level of personal responsibility individuals have versus the use of societal force, and how to apply the law to circumstances at hand. That said, regardless of how one feels about the appropriateness of some measures, such as social distancing or 14-day isolations, one cannot argue that these particular measures aren't at least based in reason and logic. With that said, my comments this morning are with regard to specifically the ordinance establishing a 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew. Gentlemen, there has been no rational or scientific basis offered as to how this ordinance prevents the spread of coronavirus. No medical organization has asked for an overnight curfew. There have been no studies or data suggesting that the coronavirus is more contagious at night. The fact is, there is no reason for a nighttime curfew, as the spread of coronavirus is determined by what you do and not when you do it. Gentlemen, this ordinance makes it a criminal act to go for a walk at 5:30 in the morning or to travel home from a neighboring community at 10:05 p.m. You have made it a criminal act to go outside and use a telescope. You have made it a criminal act to go out for a late night run or to put a baby to sleep by driving around the community. How do any of these actions threaten our community? Under what justification is any of this a criminal offense? Gentlemen, I conclude with the simple question: how does the time of day relate to the spread of coronavirus? When you take a moment and recognize that one has nothing to do with the other, I then urge you to reconsider and rescind this curfew. Thank you.
Thank you very much. State your name for the record, please.
My name is Michael Watson, and I'd like to consider, first thing I'd like to say is, I know every one of you. And I know every one of you pretty well, and born and raised here my whole life. But I don't know how many people are going to stand in front of you that actually lost a business, and I did. And not only did I lose a business, I lost the ability to make $65,000 to $80,000 worth of income this year that I'll not get paid back because I don't apply for it because I can't get an SBA loan. I have one employee, that's me, so I can't get any money out of it. But that's fine. I don't blame you for that. I think what you guys have done so far has been pretty good. Based off the data and based off the news and based off every other piece of information you have, I think you've done a pretty good job. But we know a lot more now. We know a lot more now. And even if you don't agree with the fact that coronavirus may not be as widespread as they say it is, or you think you're on the extreme side of that, we're a lot more educated. See, it wasn't Roy Cooper that shut down me being able to rent a room. It was the commissioner board that did that. And I don't blame him. To this day, I still don't blame him. But if tomorrow, if I can, I have nobody else to blame. Nobody. He didn't shut it down. You did. Now, I didn't know I was only going to have 3 minutes. Let me get through this real quick. I'm also a pastor and a preacher. I live in a state where you cannot gather with your congregation, but if you want an abortion, by all means, go get one. The logic is wrong. Nobody's rational. It's all illogical. And people will say, well, we're just trying to disperse the amount of people who can meet. That's not true. You go look at Lowe's. Lowe's is deemed essential. And when the Bible says man shall not live off bread alone, we deem that not essential. The common question, I've called a lot of you over the weekend, and you've listened to me, and I sure do appreciate that. And the question has always been, what would you do? And this is what I would do. I would understand that a one-size-fits-all doesn't work. We border Tennessee and Georgia. The park's opening on the 9th. I own the Deep Creek Lodge in Creekside Tubing. 90% of the people that turn around in my parking lot are out of state, and I have hundreds of them a day. You can't stop them. The federal government and the state own 80% of our property. We've been forced to engage in an economy and spent millions of dollars doing so. Now we're not even allowed to engage in that economy. I would open up at phase 2 and tell Roy Cooper if he didn't like it, we'll sue him. It's not the same. Not here. We're not Charlotte. We're not Raleigh. Do I get extra time or do I have to stop?
Go ahead.
But we're not Raleigh. We're not Charlotte. Phase 1 of Roy Cooper's plan is like kissing a boo-boo. It makes you feel better, but it does nothing. And I'm not talking about everybody going out and start hugging each other. But I'm saying phase 2 is probably where we should start. This is what I'm afraid of. And like I said, I'm talking to my friends up here. I really am. I hope you know that. But I'm so afraid that political posturing is going to take over and the blame's going to be put on Roy Cooper and everybody's going to get up and say, we're leaving it up to him. That's what I'm afraid of. Because that doesn't help me. It doesn't help a lot of people. It doesn't help the hairdressers. It doesn't help the restaurant owners. Common sense nowadays is like having a superpower. And if you got it, it's almost like it's a catch-22. You hold back what you really want to say because you're afraid you're going to hurt people's feelings, but if you don't speak up, the truth's never going to come out. I want to tell you this. I really do appreciate you guys listening to me. But I don't know how many people are actually going to stand up here and tell you that they've lost $65,000, $80,000 and had to shut down a business. And I want you to hear it from me because I know you. And I appreciate you. And that's my story. I wrote down one word in the back. And I think it's a good word to think about now. And that word is humility. Again, I don't blame you for anything you've done. Nothing. But today's new. Education has changed. Models have been disproven. We're not supposed to overcome the health system. We ought to be clapping for ourselves and patting ourselves on the back, not adding more restrictions. But we don't do that. Now Roy Cooper says everybody has to feel safe before they can go out. I thought I just had to not overrun the hospitals. Now I have to worry about people's emotions. And let me tell you this. People are still willing to bend. They really are. They're just not willing to be quarantined. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, sir.
State your name, please.
Mr. Patel from Rosewood Inn.
Okay.
And we are closed since March, and we are really troubling now. It's difficult. Now, if you allow us at least to open some of the things stuff, not for the outside the state, but at least for the local and the working people, might help us. With the property tax and all that, it's very hard to cope with. With the particular safety, if you allow us to open at least from the weekends, that might help us, all of us. Relax Inn, Lloyd's, Hilltop, and Rosewood Inn. It's only our request, just for the local and the working people, not out of state, because they already cancelled all the reservations. Nobody is coming in. because all our local working people keep on calling us whether you are open or not, open or not. So with the particular safety, because we clean our rooms ourselves, so we know all the safety, we can follow that. At least from the weekends, from Friday or maybe by Monday, We're not trying to disobey the law or anything. We're just trying to help our local working people and just to rent the rooms. That might help us with the property tax and all that. That's our main concern now. That's the only reason why I am representing all our motels, particularly Lloyd's, Relax Inn. I'm from the Rosewood and the Hilltop Inn.
We appreciate that. Appreciate you coming in and representing them. We will be looking at some of those options in a few moments. But we appreciate you coming in and sharing that with us.
Thank you, sir. Because the main problem with us is the property tax. It's on very high rate. You take example for me, I'm paying about almost $8,000. So that's the only reason why I said, no, let me just request to open certain part or however it can be with the safety precautions.
Right. Thank you for coming in. We
Thank
appreciate
you, sir.
it.
Thanks for listening to me.
Morning. Mike, would you
Morning,
state,
gentlemen.
would you state your name, please?
Mike Shaker, owner Everett Street Diner. Just wanted to come in and I attended a meeting of your emergency response committee on Friday, and a lot of back and forth discussion. From a restaurant's point of view, there's not much I think that the restaurants can do until the state goes to a phase 2. But in that meeting, I understood that the commissioner's stance on cabin rentals and hotel rentals is a bit beyond what the state allows for right now. And as we looked at and thought about the number of cases in Swain County versus the number of tests, when we think about the number of cases, as I understand, is 5, and the number of total tests, 550 in that range, the number is less than 1%. And the whole reactions that have come about are all about numbers. It's all about flattening the curve. We don't have a curve in Swain County. There is no curve at less than 1% of the total number of cases. And I think the Johnny from Yellow Rose, representing the cabin rental managers, had an excellent plan. They came to the committee with a plan to try to manage how they rent out cabins. For instance, cabins not being rented out same day, waiting at least 24 hours to make sure that they were disinfected and sanitized properly. But I think that a compromise would be in place, could be in place for the commissioners to lift that restriction. Given their plan and limiting what they can restrict, what they can rent from their current stable of cabins to maybe 25%, Now you're at a manageable level, but you're also slowly beginning to open up the economy here in Swain County. And I talk about that from a selfish standpoint, obviously, because more people is going to allow for more business in the restaurants. More restaurants open up. But the steps you took are the reasons we don't have a curve. But keep in mind, we are at less than 1% of the total number of cases, of the total number of tests. So I would urge you to consider a partial lifting of that particular restriction. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mike.
Good morning.
Good morning. State your name, please.
My name is Roger Hoff. I'm a local resident here in Bryson City. I'd like to say as a combined whole for all of us, our first responders, our police department, I think they've done a terrific job in doing what they can to prevent this atrocity that's happened. It's been out of our hands. I can remember Ebola or Black Death, and we've still survived this. But what it is, nowadays and age, we come to a conclusion without gathering much data when we're in the presence of these viruses. I only hope that moving forward that we're able to collect honest data and be able to use it and the powers that we're given at hand to be able to really think about the people, we the people, regardless of where we stand socially, financially, because it is devastating for all of us. And moving forward, my only hope is that that our balances and our measures that we take are fitting for everybody. Everybody. That's all I have. Thank you.
We thank you for coming in. Thank you very much for your input. Was anyone in there? Okay. I would call it Sheriff. I'd call it. Looks like Mark John or something. Oh, that was you? That was you, Mark? Your signature's worse than mine, Mark. My goodness.
teaching coach.
Okay, so I think we've done that. Commissioners, do you have any questions, what you've heard so far? Thank you, Sheriff, I appreciate that.
Good morning. The team had a busy week last week, and we covered a lot of area, I think, meeting with stakeholders and others. We'll start out as we normally do with Allison and Amber doing our surveillance report of the current situation.
Good morning. As you can see on the dashboard, North Carolina confirmed cases is 11,664, 422 deaths, and currently hospitalized is 475. Of course, this information was updated yesterday. In Swain County, as of Friday, there were 561 tests completed, 79 are pending, and we have 5 positives. We were not notified over the weekend of any other positives in the county. So as of right now, we still only have 5 positives in Swain County. The case fatality rate for North Carolina is roughly 3.6%. In the United States, it's roughly around 6%. In Georgia, I think the case fatality rate is roughly around 4% as a comparison. Amber's here to give you an update on, there's been several questions in the community about rapid test and antibody testing, so she's here to give an update about that.
Good morning. Morning.
So all the providers in the community, urgent care, the hospital, are able to do the diagnostic test for COVID-19, which is the throat swab or a nasal swab. Urgent care also has some blood tests available for antibody testing. And they're doing that as a rapid test, which is a finger stick, or a blood draw, and they send that off to a lab. And the patient gets to choose which one of those tests they want. One of the antibodies is for, it's IgM, and so it's for current infection. The antibodies, when your body's exposed to something, it starts creating antibodies to fight the virus. And so IgM is the first antibody that's produced within 7 to 14 days of exposure. So they're using that to say if you've been exposed recently and may have an infection that's not, you don't have symptoms yet. They're also doing IgG, which shows past infection. Those can also show positive for other types of coronavirus. So CDC is still trying to verify the accuracy. And so these are only screening tests. They cannot diagnose you with COVID-19. So if they get a positive on the blood test, they are then doing this nasal swab to confirm it. And then they would report that test to us, and it would be counted in our numbers. If someone does test positive on the rapid, they are advising them to self-isolate as if they're positive until the swab comes back and we know for sure. So there's been a lot of confusion and questions, but hopefully that clears it up just a little bit. They're trying to explain it to people when they come in, but it gets a little confusing with all the different types of tests. So it can be useful as a screening tool, but just know that it's not diagnostic.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman. How do you arrive at your data, Allison? There was even comments about data and false information. How do you guys arrive at the data that you present to us? Yes.
Each of the tests for Swain County
Well,
specific.
like what we have on the screen, for example. How is that arrived? How do you receive that?
It's reported through the Swain County and through the state, through NCED's computerized system, where all the data is entered. for each person that's tested.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you guys have no questions. I'm still confused. I don't know what is going on. So as far as testing is concerned, I think we asked this at the last meeting, but if someone goes to their doctor, either the doctor refers them and can they self-refer if they think they've got the virus?
So you're asking who can be tested?
Yes.
Okay, so anybody can go and be tested. There has been criteria for, they're prioritizing it to people who have symptoms, or healthcare workers, or EMS workers. But if they feel that you need to be tested, or you say you've been exposed, or you just want to test, as long as they have the tests available, they can go ahead and test.
Well, I think we talked last time about asymptomatic persons as well. If someone has elderly parents or young children in the home and the EMS and EMT and deputies, I would think would want to be tested before they went home. I've received a couple of calls from persons who work in the lodging industry, and it was said by Mike that they can handle certain criteria, but I've heard from people who are very, very glad that frontline people, waitresses, cleaners, that are glad that we have taken the steps that we've taken, because they don't want to go in behind these people from Florida and Georgia and clean and then go home to their children. What is the opportunity for frontline people to get a test? And how would they go about doing that? What could we do as a county to help them get tests so that they're comfortable in working and going back home?
So, like I said, anybody could go and be tested, but if you're talking about rapid tests, so that if they go into a place and then they're going home, they want to know before they go home, it would have to be that rapid test. And it is just a screening tool, and it's not going to work that quickly. So if you're exposed today, you're not going to know today if you have the virus.
Right.
It's going to take a week.
I understand that. My question, though, is if someone who cleans cabins, and we'll just use that as an example, someone who cleans cabins, I've received also from cabin owners a lot of steps that they want to take to ensure that everyone is safe, which I really, really appreciated. I guess it's more for the ease of mind of those who actually do that, who are actually first line exposed. If indeed someone who rents a cabin has the COVID-19, and I'm just wondering if there is any way, how long would it take if they went in and did the nose or the throat sample?
It takes about 3 days to get results back.
Okay. But if they came in and asked for that test, do we have the tests to do the...
Yes.
Okay, we do.
Doctors' offices have those tests.
Okay. So they would just go to their doctor's office to
Yes.
ask for that? Okay.
Yes. The hospital, Swain Family Care, Smoky Mountain Urgent Care, Cherokee, they all have the tests.
Okay. I appreciate that very much. That helps me. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Do
Any
you
other?
You know the cost of those tests for people?
Not right off the top of my head. Insurance is covering some of it. The rapid tests, I think, are like $35, but a nasal swab, I believe, is $80. don't quote me, that's not exact, but around about $80 through the lab that they send it off to.
And I've had a question from someone who wondered why we couldn't do like Haywood County and do the drive-up test they did that day for all their frontline people. I know for them, it comes down to a matter of the cost of the test, but those tests weren't, even those were not, as you said, are not completely reliable.
Were they rapid tests? Because I'm not real sure.
I'm not sure, but I know they did have a day at Haywood Community College where they had, I think they administered like 200 tests to their EMS, all their frontline people that wanted to take it.
And if I'm not mistaken, excuse me, I'm sorry. If I'm not mistaken, that was the nasal swab, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm sure, but I had a request and asked if that would be possible to do here for our, at least get our frontline people tested.
That is a possibility in any county to do that. We would have to request those tests from the state. With that, usually we're only testing if we think there has been an exposure for that employee. Also, you need to think about if you're tested on Monday and you work all week, and then the next week, and it comes back negative, you're still going to be exposed every day to this virus, more than likely. So testing one time isn't really going to help that situation because you're in constant exposure for that. But it is an option, and that's something I can discuss with David and Curtis, of course, if they want to set something like that up going on in the future. And also, we're working with Dogwood Health Trust to try to get an FDA-approved rapid test for the county. So they're working on that, so that's something in the future we can look at doing more quickly for those that are exposed, instead of the 3 to 5 day turnaround. But just with, the line of work that we're all in, we're constantly exposed to that. So testing one day, it doesn't really, you could be affected the next day and not know it per se.
That would only just give you the number of those people that had been exposed, really, I guess.
The
Well, that
antibody
wouldn't-
test possibly, but it would
Yeah.
also include all coronaviruses, not just COVID-19.
So,
So it could be any one of those 7.
okay.
Did you want to respond, David? Or?
I'll have a little bit before they say it. The frontline workers, EMS, law enforcement, all those other frontline workers that are out there doing this every day. We've given them guidance that they don't go home with their uniforms on, or as soon as they get home, uniforms go directly in the washing machine before they have family contact. We have a facility at EMS for them to launder the uniform if they want to bring a clean one to put on before they go home. And we talk to them about, doing that, about washing their hands frequently before they get home, doing all the things that they do to protect themselves. And of course, wearing their personal protective equipment on most calls and any call that has been screened to be a possible COVID-19 patient. One day last week, there was 3 of those. Out of the 12 calls we ran that day, there was 3 possibilities. I think it all come back negative at this point, but every call I follow up on with the hospital or with Alice or someone to make sure that patient that we transported and that crew is safe. So we routinely follow up on those every day. There's also guidance from the state and the CDC that says even though we've been exposed, if we were wearing our personal protective equipment, and even if we're being tested, it's okay for us to work because we're self-monitoring every day. We're doing temperatures, we're asking questions. Every morning when my staff comes to work, the staff going off takes some temperature. So all those things are being done to protect those staff members. If we put everyone out that had been tested, we'd have no one to answer the phones or do the, drive the ambulances. So we're doing those things to try to protect them.
But it appears to me, David, as I'm listening to you, that people who work in cabins and even restaurants could do the same thing, change before they go home, and then, you know, wash hands and wash stuff before they get to the house.
Yes, sir. I was thinking, as Allison was talking, that she and I talked last week about putting out some guidance, not only to cabin companies, but to all the retail businesses.
Right.
And as Mike mentioned a few minutes ago, John Isley had met with a bunch of cabin companies and came up with a 10-point plan that would make it safer to reopen cabins, and therefore make it safer for the staff. So as we're doing that information to put out, I think that after listening to what I just heard, we need to add that too. The same things that we do at EMS and the other places, we need to add that to the general retail and particularly in the cabin industry where the cleaning people might be exposed. The chances of someone cleaning a cabin and getting the coronavirus are very slim if they're wearing a mask and gloves and do all the normal things of washing hands and that. So we'd highly recommend that. But that would lessen the chances to very low, I would think.
Well, I think it would lower the chances of exposure, and I really appreciated what Johnny sent out, as well as what a couple of other companies sent out as to what they were going to do to take care of and protect their staff. And I was very pleased with that, and I think that you answered my second part of the question, which was, how do we get that information out?
And Allison, we talked about that last week. We'll work on that to get that out this week.
And I think it's aimed more at the waitresses and the excuse me, sorry. Aimed more at the waitresses and the cleaners. And those would be the ones that I would be interested to know that they've received the information so that they know how to protect themselves, in addition to their employers helping to protect them. So, and I don't know how we do that, David. I guess that's why I'm throwing it out to you. So
we're going to do everything we can to get that information out where it's needed in the next week or so.
Good. Thank you. Thank you,
Hey,
Vincent.
how are you going about getting information? Do you have addresses for everybody? Is it electronic? You have everybody's email? How are you?
We will, everywhere we possibly can, we'll go to the Chamber of Commerce and have them send out emails to all the businesses. Some of them will be actually hand-delivered to places we think there are higher chance of that happening. We'll distribute it through the town and let them send it to whatever it is they have. It'll be on social media, it'll be, wherever we can put it out.
And I think we need to have some way to follow up and make sure that's getting out, because I talked to a couple of realtors, the restriction came off of them when ours ended on the 16th, I believe it was, and I at least talked to two that had no idea that the restriction was off. And these people were supposed to have been contacted, so I think when we say we're going to contact people, we've got to be diligent in every way to contact them.
There was not a provision on our part to contact folks when that went off. When it was put in place, it was given an end date, a sunset date, and we just widely distributed it, but there was no provision for us to make an announcement that was taken off. It was in the 2-week shutdown, and we're going to ask y'all to formally do that today anyway, even if it's sunset date.
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying it's easy for some to get overlooked when we say.
It is. I agree.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Danny, just as a follow-up to your question about Haywood County, they did a press release on May 1st. They did 283 tests, and all of those came back negative.
Okay. But did they do the rapid test, or did they do the?
I don't know. I would say they probably did the nasal probably. I would say nasal for sure.
So then that would have taken at least 3 days, right?
Yes.
Okay. That was a question I'd had someone ask if that, they thought it would be helpful to us, obviously, or they wouldn't have mentioned it, but I did say that I would bring that forward and see what your thoughts were on that.
My report's gonna be short and sweet. It's,
Okay.
just couple of different things that was different from it was 2 weeks ago. We've had a lot of overdoses and several deaths in Swain County, including the reservation. We're probably up to 30, 31, 32 overdoses now in a couple weeks period with at least 7 deaths. And we've sent one of our deputies home. He picked up a wanted person from another county, put him in his car and drove to the county line. They picked him up, took him to their jail. He was running a temperature, so they quarantined him in a car all night and then unsecured his bond and let him go. A couple of days later, our deputies started showing some symptoms. We sent him to the doctor, test negative for the flu, which is always a little bit scary with COVID. Then we did a rapid test on him and it came back negative, so we're thankful for that. But other than that, everything same as it was 2 weeks ago.
Okay, good, thank you.
We'll take just a few more minutes than I normally do and go through a few things before we get to the recommendations. Kurt, if you go down to the zip code map, please. And if you click on the 28713 or the white part of Swain County. White part of the map of Swain County. Expand that and look at the numbers, please. Go up to the, go just a little higher and click the box. Now to your right. Wrong box. But anyway, he'll get there for us in a second. But what it shows is the actions that the citizens and the government of Swain County have taken have worked. This is broke down by zip code now, not just by counties as it once was. So any part of that map that's colored white still has 0 cases in that zip code. 28713 zip code has 0 cases. 28719 zip code, which is the Cherokee Post Office, has showed 4 cases. So, you know, congratulations what you have done and what the citizens of this county have done, but we still have no cases. We don't have a curve because of the actions that were taken and by the cooperation of the citizens. We have no curve, which is what we, you know, that was our goal from day one. The Silva zip code, there's no need to click on a curve, but I just, okay. It's, they have several cases, and the Cullowhee one has several cases. Have 16 positives in Jackson County. Have 5, 4, or 5, depending on which one you look at. Cases surrounding us, and they'll show 1 in Graham County for the property of the Eastern Band, I think. But again, what's happened here has been good because the actions have been taken. And we're going to talk to you in a few minutes about the 3 options of how to go farther. We're going to recommend that all restrictions be lifted with the exemption of the short-term rentals. And we're giving you options for that for you to consider, but of course, in the end, it's your decision. The cabin owners brought a great plan, and you said you've seen it, so y'all understand what I'm talking about there. There's another paper in front of you which has the governor's 4 phases on it. Kurt, if you go to metrics, scroll back up just a little bit. scroll back up a little bit, go to metrics on top left there. And now you can scroll down to the first map. There you go. So the governor's phases, and the governor has announced at 11:30 this morning. We think he's going to give us dates. We don't know that. We haven't seen what he's going to say, but we think he's probably going to give us dates. We think he's going to tell us that phase 1 starts this week at some point. And if you look at your paper in front of you, phase 1 basically is it's going to lower restrictions on most retail businesses. His phases are dependent upon 4 key metrics being met by the state of North Carolina. The first one is up there. Those folks seeking emergency department care during COVID-19. And overall, the trending is going down. There's a little upkick at the end, and you're going to see those little upkicks and back down. But overall, we're trending downward and down. If you get the second map, please, Kurt. Laboratory confirmed cases. If you look at the dotted line, that's the averaging, and you're seeing that that's at the top and starting to turn down. Laboratory confirmed cases. That's the true positives. That's not the false positives or the presumptive positives. Positive tests on the next, go down. This is positive tests as a percent of the total tests administered. You'll see that metric's trending downward. Go down one more. Okay, hospitalizations. If you look at the dotted blue line, we're kind of leveled out. We're not started down yet, but that's a good outcome with hospitalizations. So it looks as though the governor's metrics, which are just basically the statistics that we're looking at now, are going to be good. So we anticipate that sometime this week he will go into phase 1. At 11:30 he may say, I'm waiting till next week. I don't know. I can't guarantee you that. But our anticipation is that he'll be going into phase 1 this week. After 2 to 3 weeks of phase 1, which would be approximately the 22nd or 29th of May, he would go to phase 2. Phase 2 lifts the North Carolina stay-at-home ordinance. I'm going to read a section to you of the North Carolina stay-at-home ordinance that talks about travel and permitted travel. This under section 1, stay-at-home. Number 2, prohibited and permitted travel. Only travel for essential activities as defined herein is permitted. People riding on public transit must comply with social distancing requirements to the greatest extent feasible. This executive order allows travel into, within, or out of the state to maintain COVID-19 essential businesses and operations and minimum basic operations. So basically, that stay-at-home order, even though whatever county order Swain might have, that stay-at-home order until we get to phase 2 prohibits leisure travel into the state. So anyone coming here from another state, renting a hotel room or a cabin, would be in violation of the state order. Swain County's order to have the hotels, motels, and cabins closed is the reason that we have no curb in Swain County. That was the teeth of the ordinance that allowed us to hold this off as long as we have. Do I think we're going to have COVID-19 cases in Bryson City? Absolutely. I think we probably already do. But I also think that what we've done has worked. And my recommendation, and Allison's recommendation, I'll let her back that up, should I, is that we go with the governor's phase 2 implementation and then automatically allow the cabins and hotels open at that time. There's 2 other options that when we handed over to the county manager that we've discussed thoroughly. and they're our order recommendation. Questions about where I am?
Yes, I have a question. It's been mentioned that, I think it was last Friday, you guys had a good gathering of people and talking about all of this. And in that particular meeting, you don't even have to tell me who all was there, but who said, when you discussed with them the thing that you were going to recommend to us, that means short-term rentals will stay closed for a while longer.
Yes, sir.
What was their reaction?
The majority of the folks there discussed thoroughly, and we had a really good discussion. We had actually 3 meetings on Friday, so we could keep it small. We had cabin rentals, we had motels, we had restaurants, real estate, cabin rentals, those kind of things. They want to open sooner rather than later. One of the big things they want, though, is a hard date.
I'm sorry, they want,
A hard date.
oh, okay.
So that they can start taking reservations and planning how to open and how to make their businesses safe to open, because they would give them some time to do it.
Is there any way, because we can't set the governor's agenda, is there any way we could even offer a hard date?
We can offer a hard date to lift our restriction, and then it would still be under the governor's order.
If the governor does not lift his leisure or his restricted travel, how do we help the cabin owners not act in violation of the governor's orders?
I may have to refer this to Kim. At this point, we would probably cite a cabin owner for renting a cabin. And maybe the sheriff too. One of these two probably need to answer this question rather than me. We would cite the cabin owner for renting a cabin under our ordinance. At the point that the governor's orders in place, if ours were lifted, then it would be incumbent upon that person traveling here. The monkey would be on their back.
I agree, and I agree that, and I've talked to several county attorneys across the state, and the short-term rentals, hotels, motels are not open for business in North Carolina under the stay-at-home order. For essential travel, they are. I think there's a lot of confusion in that area, and I think that probably the governor's order could be a little bit clearer, but I think it's definitely prohibited under this act, and I think that the only thing that could happen is if you lifted your and I don't remember what the declaration was, I think it was the third, regarding that, then it is still in effect that only travel be used for essential purposes across the whole state. So there would be violations, and it could be subject to criminal citing.
And I'll let the board speak, but I don't think we, as a board, want to violate the law, nor encourage anyone else to violate the law.
Well, I mean, it's incumbent upon everyone to know who are running businesses, to know and understand what the current state of those laws are. And I think that because in section 2, it talks about essential businesses, and it says, under it says hotels and motels. I think that's what the confusion was. But it's any type of travel within the state, aside from essential business purposes, is prohibited. Under the governor's order.
Well, Kim, as you understand it, if we were to lift that, we would be subject to violation of the law. Is the law, as far as that goes, what would be the penalty of that?
Under the governor's order, and I've not looked at that provision, it's basically the same as ours. A violation of the executive order may be subject to prosecution pursuant to General Statute 166A-19.30D, and is punishable as a Class 2 misdemeanor.
Well, I know that Mecklenburg and Gaston did do that, but then they came back and rescinded the vote to lift and went back to the governor's staff. status. So that would be one of the things that I would advise us against doing, is lifting something and then having to go back and put it back in effect.
Well, what you have done is really clarify, in my opinion, to include short-term rentals as it was defined within our provisions, and it just extends further in the governor's order, in my opinion, because the governor's order does restrict any leisure travel in the terms of anything being other than for essential purposes.
Okay. Thank you, Kim. Yes, Kevin.
I get that. I like it. Here's one thing I'm thinking about though, is like, when I say essential business travel, also the regulations say that I can get exercise, I can do things as long as I'm staying away 6 foot. I can go to the grocery store, that's essential. There's people in our town now that are just traveling through at leisure, doing their thing. Is that illegal?
Well, I think that
Just because they stay somewhere, does it make it more illegal? Or I just want to,
stay,
like if they stayed at a cabin, is it more illegal to stay at a cabin than it is to travel here and go fishing or whatever?
well, I think some of those things are defined as essential for health and outdoor activity.
I'm just trying to get a clarity on it.
Yeah, I mean, by way of example, walking, hiking, running, golfing, biking, individuals can go to public parks or open outdoor recreation facilities. Those are all considered essential.
So they can come here, they just can't stay here. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
I think that's true.
Okay.
So would we not be just as susceptible with them coming here and doing their leisure time as getting it? Would we not be just as susceptible then as we would if the rentals were open?
The short answer to that is yes, sir. The second part of the answer, though, that I would ask you to consider is, remember that we're trying to flatten the curve and delay and lessen the impact. So if those folks driving through to go to the lake or the boats, if they stop here somewhere, absolutely, there's a chance that someone could be infected if they are infected. That number of people is a lot smaller than if we open our businesses completely and fully at one time to where all 1,200 rooms that we have available here could be filled by Memorial Day weekend. So again, we're just trying to slow the path and balance it and keep the curve flat. But yes, sir, absolutely. To answer your question.
And back to Kevin's question, is it not just as illegal for them to be riding their motorcycles through? That's leisure travel.
All I can look at is the wording of the law and this ordinance. And I'm looking at specific Executive Order 121, which was the one that was enacted March 27th. It was effective for 30 days, and then the governor extended it through May 8th. And it just defines what those essential activities are. It doesn't say anything about riding motorcycles, but I think that if people are riding a motorcycle through town that don't live here, and I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure you could stop every motorcyclist and give them a citation. But that specific activity is not defined within the governor's order.
Do you think we'll be having to redefine everything in the governor's order again if we lift the short-term rental?
I think the governor's order 121, like I say, I think it restricts all leisure travel because it specifically defines what can be used in leisure travel. I guess I'm taking a distinction because leisure travel, it's more defined as are they coming here to stay overnight versus driving through. I think that's some distinction that the governor didn't make in his order. for those essential travel purposes that are defined. But I don't think that it's, and I can get, you can give me just a moment when we find a specific section and I can address more of the, not essential business purposes, I guess. There's kind of a leaving home for travel and essential activities is permitted, and there's some definitions there. And there's section 2, it talks about in order to slow the spread, there are some limitations as to day-to-day life, and those things are related to business purposes, which is where the closure of motels and hotels are in play here. So, does that answer your question?
Sort of. I understand what you're saying. Essential travel is allowed. People coming through here might not be essentially traveling. We can't stop everybody that comes through, but they can stop at our gas stations, at a restaurant, at our food places, the parks will be opening. When are the parks opening?
The ninth.
The 9th. They'll be coming through and they can stop in the parks and all this. And I'm wondering, I had a question about renting tubes out. I believe it was by Mr. Watson who spoke to us earlier. If that would be considered, as golfing is considered getting out and exercising, if people renting tubes, walking up the creek and coming down would be.
I think the crux of all that is the mass gatherings. Is that going to continue to be restricted to
10 under phase 1.
or less? And that's, I think that's where it comes into play, as well as following the social distancing guidelines that have been set out by the CDC, the White House, everywhere. So, and I think that's what is kind of in play. So, every scenario, I don't have an answer on, but I think if you follow strictly the governor's order, those things that are allowed for outdoor activity, that's going to be allowed for Jackson County residents coming to Swain County, I think, as well as it is for our own people. And likewise, our people will be able to go there.
Kenneth, I think on the tubing, in my opinion, that the Park Service is going to make, I think they'd make a declaration as whether they would allow it. Because they've still stated in that opening the park, there's going to be certain restrictions still in place, and it's a partial. They find some of it, but I'm not sure if it's all. They might possibly, most of the tubing is done up in the national park, as we all know. So they might have the defining word on that as to whether they allow that or not.
Right, which we might be having to define it also, because if they want to tube in the river, they might start trying to do that and still be able to rent and still claim it's exercise. And I don't know, I think we might be having to redefine or reinforce the definitions of several things again, as far as even essential businesses in some of this stuff.
But even if they start in the park, they come out of the park into Swain County.
Right.
So I agree. I think we need to look at clarification so that we're not second guessing ourselves every time we meet.
So if we take just a second to look at these phases.
Sure. Go ahead,
Phase 1 and 2. And this North Carolina's phase 1 and 2 was modeled off of the White House's phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. The president put those out about 2 weeks ago. The state of North Carolina very closely followed that. So we're looking at pretty much what's been recommended for the entire country. Phase 1 allows travel to essential commercial activities. It ensures that any open stores implement appropriate employee and consumer social distancing, enhanced hygiene and cleaning protocols. Still a limit of no more than 10 people. Reopen parks that have been closed subject to the same gathering limitation. Outdoor activities still encouraged. That should happen beginning at some point this week. We think this Friday. But again, at 11:30 this morning, the governor's going to be on, and we'll have more guidance to that. If you look at phase 2, which is 2 to 3 weeks after this Friday, with the projected timeline we're looking at now, lift the stay-at-home ordinance completely. It goes away. Encourage vulnerable populations to continue to stay at home. limited opening of restaurants, bars, fitness centers, personal care services, businesses that can follow safety protocols. Restaurants may be only open to 25% of the capacity or 50% of the capacity. We don't know what that's going to be yet. We're going to get further definition within the next 2 weeks here today. Allow gatherings at houses of worship and entertainment that are at reduced capacity. Churches will be asked to social distance as much as possible, but you're going to be allowed to have service inside your church. Maybe to reduce capacity, but they're going to be allowed to do so. Increase the number of people allowed at gatherings. That would have to happen to allow the churches to have service inside. So we may be up to 50 people in a gathering, or it may be 40. We don't know that number yet, but we're certainly going to get that number from the governor's office within the next 2 weeks. At that point, we'd open public playgrounds, and we're talking about 2 to 3 weeks from now. We're not talking about July 4th or anything. We're talking about 2 to 3 weeks from now. And continue rigorous restrictions on nursing homes and congregate care. We have the danger in those places is immense. 100% of the occupants in a Henderson County nursing home are positive. They lost 6 lives in that nursing home. The rest of them are coming out on the other side of it. They're starting to improve. So that was about 100-person facility, I think. Maybe a little less. So phase 1, probably this week for 2 weeks, and then phase 2 after that, where the restrictions are just about everything we've heard today. People that came in and talked to us, people we talked to Friday, we're satisfying what they're asking us to do within the next 2 weeks.
David, I know y'all talked, and as I read some of what y'all talked about on Friday, I think something hadn't been discussed. Has anybody talked to Ingles, the IGA, or the food stores? I know a lot of people are worried about the food. When you give out the numbers of the rentals we have, the rooms that we have, and you talk about that being full, and the numbers going from 14,000 people to 40,000 people in a given day here, there was a lot of concern that our food stores couldn't handle that. How do you think that can be addressed? To be assured that we can, or is it one of those things we just wait and see? And at that point, do we decide then, okay, we've got too many people, we're going to have to send somebody home, we don't have enough food?
We had one brief discussion with Ingles, and that's something that I will do again this week. No matter what you all decide here today, that's just something I need to do. The management thinks the issue is the supply chain, not in the fact that we're not going to have enough food. The supply chain, that the truck that may deliver three Ingles stores that comes out of Asheville, he's only got room for enough toilet paper, enough this and this for one store, and enough for some other product for another store. So they feel like it's still a supply chain issue. They got behind, they're still playing catch up. Do I think that we're going to be full of cabin rentals and everything between now and Memorial Day? I don't think so. I think that's going to ramp up slowly.
Well, listening to some of them, I think it will, but the most that talked to said that they've got people on the phone chomping at the bits to get here. And I think they are. And they're saying this is the place to be. Low cases, no cases, good fresh mountain air coming out of the larger cities around us. But I think it's legitimate concerns of other citizens that aren't cabin rental business people about how it will affect the amount of food supply that we have. Because on days when I go to Ingles, there's a lot of empty shelves now. There's some days you don't get your list. Very rarely they have everything that's on your list. But considering the number of people that could be here, and we don't know, they may fill up and they may not. But I think that's a conversation we need to consider in this.
Yes, sir. All the cabin companies we talked to feel like it would be a slow build up until Memorial Day, right? So But absolutely, the food supplies is a big part of our discussion. We're very concerned about that.
David, do you think, whether it be 2 weeks from now or another 2 weeks after that, will the food supply still be an issue? Will the spike in cases being here still be an issue? The point I'm trying, no matter how long we put this off, whenever we open up, do you think we're gonna get a spike in numbers of the virus?
I think that we're eventually going to get a spike in Swain County. Not necessarily a spike, but at least we're going to have numbers in Swain County. I don't know if it'll be rapidly like overnight or if it'll be over a 2 week or 2 month period. But we're going to get cases in Swain County. I feel sure. That's my opinion. I don't know what else. Yeah. So that's what we think. I really don't think it's going to be a spike. I think it's going to be a slow build-up, and it could take months. I also think that a year from now, we're still going to be discussing coronavirus and how it's affecting our lives. You know, until there's a vaccine that's been approved and tested and working, we're still dealing with this. We're dealing with this all summer, all winter, and into next year, because the projection of the immunization for it is over a year out. Either that or 50 or 60% of the people population has had it and has antibodies, and we're not even sure that the antibodies, how long they last. They may last 2 weeks or 2 years. We don't know. So, absolutely. Mr. Partner, we're going to be dealing with this in 2 weeks, 2 months, and 2 years, and maybe 2 years. Yes, sir. Our goal is to continue to slow it and do the best we can to protect the citizens of this county.
At one time, I looked at one of those maps they had, and I think it might have been on this side. I think it might have been shared by the health department at one time. That was giving predictions of the number of people per number of county that would have coronavirus during the peak, which was, what, a week ago?
From some of these numbers, Kurt, can you go back up maybe one? Total test looks like it flattened out, which.
Yeah.
Okay, just go back, come back down one. Let's just look at hospitalizations for example, a little more right there. So, in North Carolina, we haven't peaked yet.
Okay.
If you're looking at the number of hospital beds committed COVID-19.
So
I think we're on the plateau.
Okay, that's, because one time I looked at that, that had like 3 to 5 deaths in Swain County. And it was like per deaths per county. That was, it was on the legit side. It wasn't just somebody threw it. So I think we're doing really good there as far as that. And so how we handle it from here on out, I think is the harder part than shutting it down. So.
David, may I interrupt you and ask the mayor to speak to what his constituencies are looking at and for?
Well, I was in at least part of the emergency management team meetings that went on all day, and I was only able to attend part of it. One of the things we talked about is the stay-at-home order and the travel. I'm going to read from some notes I stole from Councilor Carter. Modify the stay-at-home order to allow travel not currently defined as essential. So once we go into phase 1, what we call essential today is no longer going to be the same definition, because it will include clothing stores, sporting goods stores, bookshops, housewares, and other retailers. So we're no longer going to be operating under it has to be essential business. I go to bookstores, but that's not an essential business for me. I think we've put a lot of burden on our short-term rentals. Those folks are not making any money, but they're still paying mortgages, I imagine. A couple weeks could make a big difference for them. And as David said, that we're going to be they predict we will have a slow growth to about Memorial Day. So I think we would give them a chance to start getting their procedures in place and learning what they're doing if we get them open now. And I'm as afraid of the virus as anybody. So I don't mean to sound like I'm going to just turn it all off. But I'm with Mr. Park a little bit. When do we do it? I think we give them a chance now before we open big, so that our folks who are doing the cleaning can understand what they have to do to stay safe. The folks who are making reservations understand that, like Mr. Inslee said, that we have to go, say, a full 24 hours before we re-rent that building. I think that would give them a chance to start getting this. It's going to be real hard in June to say you've got 7 days a week nonstop, but we don't want you to do that. So we need to get them into this and get a feel for what's happening. Now's a good time to do that. And as for leisure travel, unless there's a lot of people all driving Ford Mustangs and all stopping for gas at the same time, there's a lot of people out here in car clubs, things like that, that are here on leisure travel already. When the park opens, they're going to be here. I'm at least one of the ones who contacted the superintendent before the closure, and that was my point I made to him, that we were getting a lot of people on the streets here, regardless of whether they could camp out. So we're going to have those people. So I think we're not mitigating the risk near as much as we like to believe we are on this. And the folks who are doing the short-term rentals, they're taking the major hit on this. Everybody else is getting a chance to at least make a little money. And that was my thoughts on it. And I understand all the science, the folks here have done a fantastic job explaining that, but in the end, here we have to give these folks a chance to make a living. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
I believe that the way the rental companies, I've talked to most of them, a lot of them too, they're really trying to work to make this thing happen the right way. So I don't think there's like this haphazardly, we're going to open up and let everybody. I think they've actually got a good mindset of a protocol that they've already got established that they're going to do. And some of them's already been doing this, trying to get the cabins clean. I know one rental company was getting rid of mattresses. I know, you know, trying to keep ahead of the game. And so I do think we owe that to these businesses to try to figure out how we can get this up and going. This is, whether we like it or not, this is a lot of our livelihood. And I'm not just saying that for just people in this room. Everybody in this county this has been functioning this way. So I think we need to really make an effort to not meet in the middle, but kind of work together somehow that we can get this thing going again.
Sheriff, did you have any questions or thoughts on what's being said? Okay. Okay.
But the big question I got is, if we today said, let's open this thing back up, let's use the protocol that these cabin companies have come up with, kind of adopt this into our, whatever it is we got that we might do here forward, are we completely disregarding the governor's rules?
I don't think by you eliminating any of what you've done is disregarding his orders. His orders stand regardless of what you do.
Yeah.
It's all about the enforcement of it.
Okay.
And that's not really you enforcing it, but it's the enforcement mechanism that's in the state or the county to do that because it's a crime. So I don't think that you as a body are disregarding anything. It's just, you know, encouraging enforcement of it and compliance with it.
So if we said let's open up the short-term rentals today.
You're not opening up the short-term rentals. They can only rent to business essential travel.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to know. So we couldn't say that.
You can't say you're open for business.
Okay.
Generally.
Were you done, David? I didn't. Okay, all right.
So we did have a good meeting with business owners on Friday, and after that we met for several hours and talked about all the different facets of of health and welfare of the community, and decided to come up with 3 options for y'all to consider today. Of course, option number 1 is recommended by the emergency team, and just hearing from council about how leisure travel is not essential at this point. So it kind of goes along with the governor's already executive order in place. So basically, we're recommending that all restrictions except the short-term rental be lifted on May the 4th. Short-term rentals would be scheduled to open when Governor Cooper implements phase 2 of the state reopen plan. Option number 2, if you didn't want to go with that recommendation, option number 2 is recommend all restrictions except for short-term rental be lifted on May the 4th. The short-term rental would be lifted on May the 22nd. This gives them a hard date. At this point, this is the projected date of the phase 2.
But is that not, I don't want to confuse people or have people confused. When we say a date, that's not our date, that's the governor's date.
That's his projected date. If he's not implemented phase 2 and they start renting cabins or renting things to people that are here on leisure, then technically they are still in violation of the stay-at-home order that the governor has in place.
Okay.
And option number 3, I'll go through.
Let me say one more time, please. We're lifting county restriction if we vote to do that. You know, it still has nothing to do, as Kim said, with what the governor said. We're not saying that we would open up cabin rentals. I think that what we should be saying is that we were lifting all county restrictions if you choose to do that, rather than for us to say we're opening up rental cabins for you, because we're not doing that. We're just lifting the restriction that says Swain County says you can't be open. Whatever the governor's rule is still in place. So,
and I appreciate that, David, because that's what I want the people out in the public to hear. It's not what we have done on any specific date. It's what the governor does that determines when these things happen in the future.
that's correct.
Okay.
And that Swain County's action is simply to lift any heavier restrictions that we might have.
Right, right.
Not to open the cabin. We very seriously can't legally say that we're opening cabin rentals, because that would be in violation of the governor's order. We'd be in the same kind of issue.
Okay.
That we don't want to be.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Okay.
So with that said, the final one is recommend all restrictions be lifted on May the 4th, and then also rental properties would be open on May the 8th. And that's airlifting of the air restrictions only.
Okay, go back and start over again. I didn't follow that.
So with what we're talking about is lifting air restrictions on rental properties, okay? The first one would be wait till phase 2 of the governor's plan be implemented. The second one, wait until May the 22nd. And the third one, do it this Friday. And that's lifting air restriction on short-term rental.
Okay, only Swain County's restrictions.
Only Swain County's.
Okay, questions, guys?
I got a question.
Okay.
If we lift our restrictions and the governments or the states still got their restrictions, does that put Curtis in a spot where he's going to have to go and cite if anybody rents their cabins because we don't have the restrictions but the state has it? I mean, what does that look like? Sorry, Curtis.
I think that if people are renting hotels, motels, short-term rentals for anything other than essential business purposes, then yes, he would have an obligation to cite those under the governor's order or our order. If our restrictions are released or lifted or terminated, then he would be citing under, it's still the same statute,
Yeah.
but it is under the governor's order at that point.
I just want some clarity on that.
I mean, it's difficult, but I mean, there's not enough I mean, I'm certain there's not state law enforcement officials
Exactly.
that are coming out, but I think it's incumbent upon local law enforcement officials in every county and town to follow the governor's orders.
One thing I want you all to understand too, every one of these orders that come down for the governor says that it'll be enforced by state and local officials. Well, I've not seen any state officials out here. It's been on our shoulders and our shoulders completely.
That's what I wanted to make. How much burden we'd be putting on you if we lifted, and then it was still stuck in the state, so.
But I think that we need to remember the oath of office we all swore to. And the oath of office says we will defend the Constitution of the state, federal, state, and also enforce the laws so ordained. And so we have that obligation. So I think that it's very important that we understand that. And this is why I said earlier on, I don't want us giving the appearance of giving anyone permission to violate the law. So I'm very concerned about that as we go through this process.
Well, I mean, it's like every other law that Sheriff Cochran and his folks enforce are probably mostly state laws. I mean, DWIs, breaking and entering, those are all county laws. This is adding to his already full plate, but that, you know, that is what that is at this moment, hopefully.
Thank you. Yes, I understand that, and I'm looking at the sheriff, and he understands that, and so, okay, let's get back to you for a second.
So basically, these are the three options for your consideration about lifting the Swain County restrictions at this point.
Okay, you've heard the three options, and you've had the three options in front of you for some time, and I know you have them because I have them, and I can't find mine as I'm sitting here. What's your thoughts and pleasures?
As I look at these, option 1 and 2 are basically the same, except for setting a date to open. And in thinking, and I've been in the cabin room, I was in the cabin room business several years ago. If somebody gave me a date and I started booking up on that date, by that date, and then I couldn't, that's difficult to start canceling those reservations and sending money back. It gives you a hope. I know that the people need hope on a time for this to open, but we won't know, maybe a little more clarification like David said when the governor speaks today, but us setting a date on it, to me, is giving a false hope. And the fact they may have to go ahead and cancel, I'd love to, I wish he could pin it on that date, and maybe he can, I hope that he will. But that's my concern with setting a date. And then I think that would leave open the possibility for some to say, well, I'm just not going to cancel, I'm going to go ahead and I've got them booked, I'm going to get them here. And as we all know, there's not going to be a lot of enforcement of this. We don't have, it's going to be up to our renters, the people that own the rentals, to abide by these. My recommendation is the first, based on, I'm good with lifting all of our restrictions, even the short-term rental restriction that we put on, and go by the governor's phases. Because us lifting it would change it none. It just puts by the governor's law and not ours.
And it backs us off some of our more strict to what the governor says. And that's what we're trying to say, is that once the governor takes a second step into the phase, or phase 2, then we just merely accept that, not have to come back and redo our, vote.
So, are you for option 1 or option 3?
I'm for option one.
Okay, which is
And which is,
wait till the governor comes out with phase 2 and then reopen.
right,
Correct.
and I think it was stated to me in the letter, that was the one that our group is recommending as a, I mean, you put it in an order of recommendation, did you?
Correct.
Numerical order, 1, 2, 3.
Yes.
Let Allison answer that. Allison and my recommendation.
Because it follows the governor's
Okay,
rules and
right.
law.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to clear, because as I was given, it said they were in order of your preference, and that was the top one, so I just want to make sure that that was, could be stated also.
Correct.
Okay. Any other? Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm looking at option one as probably my preferred as well. We've done a lot of talking about, and I think there's some confusion about what we're doing and what the state does. All we're doing is taking off the stuff, the extra that we may have added, but we're still under state guidelines. So really short-term rentals, campgrounds, all that type of thing still fall under the governor's guidelines. Am I correct in saying this? So
Again, for the leisure.
For leisure travel.
Essential business travel, yes.
Um,
I think that under the amendment to the supplemental declaration, it was, I think, March 30th ordered, the board just simply made it very clear about what types of things would remain closed. Hotels, motels, resorts, inns, guest houses, beds and breakfast, campgrounds, RV parks, vacation rental and home rentals or leases by Airbnb, home away, VRBO. And I think those are, the exceptions to that were the essential business travel.
So
that's
when
outlined in the governor's.
when we pull, if we choose to, if we pull then any extra restriction we had, which would be, for example, the curfew would not exist anymore and that type of thing. So we would take that away. We are still, I want to make it clear there, we're still under the governor's restrictions of leisure travel.
We are, yes. Yes, and I think that gets lifted somewhat at phase 2, which I guess I wanted to say that these phases in this plan that the governor has set forth, that's not law at this point. That's his plan. If cases go up, I guess those phases could change in different ways. So while you have to have that as a working plan and a working method to make decisions, it still needs to be understood that that is just a plan that can be changed and modified based on the data that gets presented.
One of the things that has been pointed out to me, and I'm sure it's been pointed out to the rest of you, that the concern for the larger population counties who don't want to open their, or who have opened their motels, they say it doesn't affect us because we don't have any. We have 5 confirmations. And the thing that we need to look at is that when they begin to open, I have to agree with David, when they begin to open, I think we're going to see an increase in the cases. I don't see how you get around that, and I don't care if we do it today or next year, you're still going to have that situation. So I just don't want people to panic when it starts. We start seeing more cases and wanting to run visitors out of Swain County, because that's not going to really be the culprit, I do not think. But anyway, that's my opinion.
Well, I believe what you're saying is right, whether it's today, tomorrow, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. When we have people come here,
Right.
we're going to have a higher chance of getting more cases.
I agree.
As far as the rentals and stuff, we did have one motel owner speak to us earlier about just opening up for workers and stuff, which with us having them shut down, we're not open up to workers, are we? We're not.
We're already.
When we closed down hotels and short-term rentals, we don't allow companies coming here to do work, do we?
Construction workers, yes, they
Okay,
have been, they've been essential.
I
As long
thought
as
you
it goes
told
along
me
with
that we
essential.
couldn't because I thought on their swimming pool ordeal, I asked you about that and you said, yeah, they can come, but they can't stay in our county.
That's correct, because they were going with the 14-day quarantine issue.
Right.
Not the
Okay.
fact that they were, if they were from another county in North Carolina, they could come in and stay. But this was the out-of-state
The
14-day
out-of-state
quarantine.
part.
Yeah,
So as long as it's workers and stuff, they can stay in motels
correct.
now. But even with us lifting our short-term rental thing, we're not affecting the law at all. We're not breaking
My
any,
understanding,
we're
yes.
not going against the governor.
Right.
I think we should just lift all of our things, all of our
So that's number one, right?
implements.
That's
Well,
number 3.
No, that's number
Number
3.
three.
Number 1 lifts all restrictions except for short-term rentals to be open whenever the governor implements phase 2, which is, I mean, if we lift them all anyways, it's gonna be up to the governor anyways, what law they pass. I still think we're gonna have lots of people coming here regardless of what we do with other counties around us, opening up how they wanna open up. I believe that we're gonna have lots of travel through our county. We'll have lots of people stopping at our stores and stuff, no matter what we do. I don't know how we get to the point where we say we're opening up without everybody having the same worries we're gonna have. We're gonna keep having the same worries. Whether we open up, the quicker we open up or the further out. We're gonna have the same worries for our people, that they're gonna be vulnerable to this. They're gonna be more apt to get it than what they were before. So I don't know how we go about even setting that plan to open up the rentals.
Right. Well, in my mind, once we remove all of our restrictions, then what we do comes out of Raleigh, not out of Washington City here. So that's my thinking, and am I pretty close on that? Or?
Yeah. I think that, again, whenever you lift your restrictions, whatever the governor still has in place is
Remains in place,
still,
yeah.
in effect.
Okay.
By looking at option 3, I mean, they all say the same thing in the first line, but the second line bothers me when it says that the short-term rentals would be lifted on May the 8th. That, to me, is not correct, because in phase 1, it does not say that short-term rentals will be lifted.
It means your restriction will be lifted, not the governor.
Well, yeah, ours says that ours will be lifted on May the 4th. I'm looking at the May the 8th when it says here, when the governor implements phase 1, it says the short-term rental would be lifted on May the 8th when the governor implements phase 1.
Correct, and he's anticipated to implement phase 1 on the 8th.
Right, but that don't lift then on short-term rentals. It modifies the stay-at-home order, which under that is, as we've been talking about, still prohibits leisure travel.
So when we make reference to his phases in these options, we're kind of going along with when he does a certain task. Okay, when he implements phase 1 or phase 2, it's not tied to that. You see what I'm saying on those two? That it just gives a time frame. He's scheduled, or right now he's looking at May the 8th as far as implementing his phase 1, and all we're saying is we're just going to lift theirs. We're just going to lift our restriction. Now, the hotels and short-term rentals will still be in violation of his orders, right, if they rent, but not ours because ours is lifted.
But I don't think
that's kind of disingenuous. That's kind of misleading.
Yeah.
I understand.
I don't think we can make the statement, the short-term rental would be lifted on May the 8th. I think you'd have to put that out of that line. I mean, that makes
There's
it
no
just like the
community
other.
distinction between what the governor's doing and what we're doing.
I think that we have to say that whatever restrictions we have in place are terminated by the board. And instead of saying it's going to be lifted, because I mean, essentially, it means the same thing as far as your purposes, but for the community hearing it, it's just that your restrictions as a board are terminated.
Right.
But whatever is still remaining with the state and by the governors is remaining in effect until whenever that changes.
Yeah.
So-
Excuse me, Kevin had a, oh, go ahead, Kevin.
Well, this is where I'm really getting confused. So why we even got a short-term rental order?
We put ours in place, I believe, a
Did
little
we
bit
put ours,
before the
we
governor
put it
did
in
his.
before the governor?
Yes, yes,
But-
we did.
His came in and trumped ours, right?
Right.
Or does it? Okay? So if,
No,
Ours is more strenuous.
ours is more stringent.
ours is more strenuous. Okay.
Well, in my opinion, it may not be more stringent, it clarifies and defines more of what we meant by, in his, it says hotels and motels can be used for non-essential travel, not non-essential, hotels and motels. But ours defines more of what that means, and we added Airbnbs, cabin rentals, home rentals. So that's, even though I think that the governor's order impliedly means, and a lot of other county attorneys do too, and that's what they're working under, is that it's a stay-at-home order. So it means the only people that can be traveling in our state and using hotels and motels or whatever rentals is for essential business purposes only. So I think, I know it's confusing because the definitions are different.
Right. But right now, in Swain County, they can't even come in on necessary travel.
Yes, they can.
Okay.
If they meet the 14-day quarantine provision.
Out of state.
I mean, for business purposes, if someone's coming here from out of state, under the quarantine part of the declaration in Swain County, they have to be quarantined for 14 days, which means they can't go out into the community and work.
Right.
But if you're coming from Mecklenburg County, then you can come here for business purposes under that
So are we
third
keeping
day.
that?
And when we lift the curfew, then they can stay overnight, which,
I think it's more of the 14-day quarantine is the staying
okay,
overnight part.
okay. All right. Did that answer your question, Kevin, or do you still have?
I'm still confused, but no. No, I understand that ours is probably more, it's not more strict, it just lays out more understanding. But if we did not even have ours right now, then the same thing as what we've got would fall under the government, right?
Except the curfew and the
It's,
things
I'm
we're
talking about just the
stay home order.
short-term rental thing.
Except it wouldn't be defined, Kevin. I guess that's where it comes back to. Ours, what they're saying is ours is defined more. It gives better guidance in the community.
Right.
I think that's what we're saying.
Okay.
So.
I think it's other surrounding counties have actually used our language.
Okay.
Can we go way back before we started this, before the governor had the stay-at-home order in place, and Swain County put one in place? That was in response to the citizens of Swain County coming saying, every parking lot's filled with out-of-state cars. They're at Ingles, they're filling up the cabins. You know, this virus is gonna be brought to us sooner than it might be if there were some restrictions in place. So that's why our restriction in place on those short-term rentals was based on what the public was asking you as a board to do.
Yeah.
Okay? So, and to clarify the three options. Option one lifts the curfew, the 14-day quarantine. It leaves in place the short-term rental until phase 2 kicks in, whenever the governor might decide to do that. Option number 2 lifts the quarantine, the curfew, and gives us a date on which Swain County's ordinance that restricts short-term rental would be lifted. Only that we lift our more restrictive wording. Phase 3, or option number 3, is this Friday, that we lift all the Swain County ordinances, having nothing to do with what the governor has in place. His orders are still in place. We're lifting a more restrictive ordinance that Swain County has in place. That's what phase 3 says, along with everything else. Well, option. Number 1 says we're lifting everything except short-term rental. We're tying it to phase 2 of the governor's order. Number 2 says we're lifting everything except short-term rental, And we're going to say that Swain County is no longer has anything to do with this on the 22nd. Whatever the governor has in place is still there. And phase 3 is we're lifting all Swain County restrictions as of this Friday. Most of them as of today, but the short-term rental as of this Friday. Does that clarify? Does that make?
When I hear you say it, it's clear. Whenever I start thinking about it, it isn't clear anymore. So, but yes, it
Mr.
does.
Chair.
Yes.
But in option 3 that you were just speaking of, that you, I appreciate your trying to clarify that for us, we're still under the governor's rules. I mean, as we've been
No matter
saying.
what, yes.
We're still under, whatever, we are just talking about what we are going to do as our county ordinances or our county supplements. We're just doing away with our county supplements.
Yes.
Every one of these, we're still under governor's guidelines or governor's rules.
Yes, sir.
Every single one.
Yes.
Okay, regarding that, David, can I ask you a question? Where did the 2 dates come from? Where did the 8th and where did the
22nd.
22nd, where did those 2 dates come from?
The 8th comes from the anticipation of the governor saying we're in phase 1 on the 8th. That's the anticipated date we have now. In about 30 minutes, that may change, but
Right.
you know, that's where the 8th came from. The 22nd would be 2 weeks after the 8th, in which he projects that we can go into phase 2 in the state.
Okay.
I still,
If,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, if we took the first option, and I'm looking at him now, if we took the first option, which we did away with everything, what's the difference between that and the other 2 options except for the dates?
It gives more guidance to the people as far as definitions of what short-term rentals, what is essential, basically.
Okay.
Correct?
Okay. I'm sorry, Danny, go ahead.
I still continue to have a problem, even though we talk about this, with that one sentence that the short-term rental would be lifted on May the 8th.
You can probably modify that language of an
But,
option.
yeah, I'm good with the option except for that line being in the language of it. And then it would be, the only difference between the first one would be that we were lifting everything. To me, the option for me would be to lift all of our restrictions and from here to date, go with the governor's recommendations in his phases.
So that's number 3 in your options, right?
Yep. That is, but that May the 8th date still could cause confusion, I think, because this says short-term rental would be lifted on May the 8th. To me, that's saying, okay, people can go ahead and book their room, and they're going to rent them on May the 8th.
You're terminating your restrictions.
You're
on May
terminating
the
the
8th.
restrictions. That has nothing to do with what the governor does or what the state. So the short-term rental folks are going to have to become educated about the state law at that point and understand what their
Well, I'm
obligations
good with terminating our restrictions today and not putting the 8th in. I think that clarifies it better. And then stating, from here to date, we're following the governor's phases of order how to open. I'm just saying that date right there, I think will confuse a lot of people.
The problem is going to be, and I'll go back to the sheriff in a minute, enforcement. You know, the governor's relying upon him and his staff to do enforcement. We're relying upon him and his staff to do enforcement. And now if you start changing the way it's been done the last month and a half and going back to the governor's part and re-educating the public on the specific laws, because I know that most of them probably do not know the difference between the two, his job just got a lot harder. So that's just my opinion, and you see that point. They already know that, you know, the county has this, you know, short-term rental, and they're shut down.
How did the 2 dates ease his job? That's, I guess I'm confused on that as well.
Well, if you take it away, that's why we're recommending number 1.
Well,
I mean, that's why
Sure,
we're recommending
that's why
option
it was
number
number
1.
one.
Yeah, because we didn't want any dates. That needs to come in when the governor has phase 2.
Right.
Then they'll all be in compliance.
Okay.
Everything will be compliant. You know, if they start renting when he implements phase 2, then they'll be in compliance.
Okay. All right. Other questions?
So
other questions?
I just didn't want to get out and a lot of folks look and say, well, they gave you 3 recommendations. Recommendation 3 sounded a whole lot better to me. Turn us loose and let us go. Why did you not, it was one of the recommendations, why didn't you accept it? But I want people to understand that your recommendation, first of all, is number 1.
Correct.
Did you have?
I don't know that I have much more to contribute that hasn't already been spoken to.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it's getting more and more clear for everybody and for us as well, that we are speaking only of lifting our declaration, our supplemental declarations. That's what we're speaking on.
Right.
That's what we're speaking to. That's what we're about to vote on. We are not voting on whether the governor has, the governor does still have the leisure travel in the books. We are just saying we are going to lift our declarations, our supplemental declaration, and then we are going to go by what the governor is telling the state how to operate.
Right.
I think that's what we're just saying and doing. It seems to be very confusing between what our supplement was and what his directions are.
Right.
And so what we're trying to do is just take ours off and go with his.
And I think, Counselor, that you've stated that very succinctly and correctly, that we can't do anything up there in his office. We can only do things here. And so, yes, as I understand it, Roger, that's what we're doing.
And if I may add, and I'll kind of cut my eyes, Kim, to make sure, but it's illegal for us to not follow the governor's rules. I mean, we have to follow those guidelines. So we are only talking about our supplemental declarations. And then we fall under the guidelines of the state, which we legally have to do, and which everyone here swore that they would do.
That clarifies it for me. Kenneth, do you have anything?
No, I'm just ready to move on. I'm
Let's
going
get
to
this
make
over.
a motion that we lift our supplemental.
Okay, option number
Restrictions.
1, just for while I'm following this.
I'm recommending we lift all of ours.
Okay, that's option 1, I think, because it doesn't have a date in it. Option 1 does not have a date in it.
Or not lift, I make a motion that we terminate all of our restrictions that we've put forth.
Okay. You hear it as a motion on the floor. I need a second.
But
Okay.
are we voting on option 1?
No,
We
you're
have a
voting
motion
on
on the
option
floor.
3. His is option 3.
We have a motion on the floor for option 3. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, because, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor for option 3. Would you mind reading option 3, Mr. Manager?
Excuse me,
Oh,
I didn't recommend option 3 or anything. I made a motion that we just terminate all of ours without any dates, so there is no confusion. That we just terminate all of our restrictions and go with the governor right now. It's
Okay.
not even really, that way you're not reading these dates and confusing more people.
Okay, would you mind reading option 3? That's the motion on the floor right now.
No, he just rescinded that. I think he's saying option 1, because it doesn't have the dates in it. Or is it?
I believe he's saying that he wants
He's
to.
saying he's
just
not
every
going to tie it to an
Every
option.
declaration that's been adopted by you guys is rescinded or terminated as of now. Is that what you're saying?
All of the restrictions we put forth.
Okay, all right. Now, we had a second, so the person, Kevin, you seconded it. It's none of the options. It's just a statement. that we're rescinding everything that we have done regarding the COVID-19 up to this point.
Well, and I want to be clear, because you still have the local declaration of local emergency, which is separate from the supplemental declarations that have been issued.
Right. I want to make
Restrictions.
Restrictions that went past what the governor's restrictions are. I want to make a motion that we terminate our supplemental addendums.
So you're making a motion to terminate all supplemental declarations to the emergency. All supplemental emergency
that we are doing, not the state of emergency.
Correct.
The state of emergency on behalf of Swain County was adopted on March 17th, 2020. The declaration subsequent to that started on March 23rd, 2020.
Okay, I'm confused about the total restrictions and what that means.
Okay, you want me to chime in?
Go ahead.
Okay, the first one is the 14-day quarantine. The second one is the stay-at-home order. And then that's basically it.
The curfew.
The curfew, I'm sorry, the curfew.
You have the third one was an amendment to the short-term rental.
Right, so I'm kind of connecting that together.
But it's just
So-
the three things.
Three of that,
is
plus
the way
he's
you
adding the
understand it?
short-term
Is that
rental,
what
so
you're saying?
that makes the 4.
I'm saying everything beyond what the governor is doing, that we have added ourselves that are more stringent than what the governor has done. That's what I'm saying. That I'm making a motion that we get rid of those. All the supplements that we have put in place. The state of emergency is not a supplement, correct?
Correct.
All supplements that we've put in place, I make a motion that we terminate them.
Okay. You've heard that. I need a second.
Can I explain what I'm seconding? Maybe.
Okay, go ahead.
If we terminate everything that we went that exceeded above the state's guidelines, then we're going back to the state guidelines. So whatever happens from here forward is dictated by the state, including short-term rentals. All right? Which makes sense to me. I know ours tells a little bit more what this is, but I think it's going to be way more confusing. It's the same law that we have for our short-term rentals, same general statute is the same one that the government has, right? So we put this back on the government.
It's not a general statute.
Well, that's how it got to where, we had to have something to base it off of, right?
It's all based on General Statute 166.
Yeah, exactly.
Which allows the states to put those in place.
Right.
Yes.
So
but
the
in order
state
to do
has
that, you
its-
have to have the state of emergency
Right, and we got that.
in between.
But I also think that we should have a game plan of how to open up our short-term rentals when the state opens them up. Not when we open them up, but when the state opens up. So I think that's where that, kind of where you guys talked about having a plan on these rentals comes together and says, hey, we're gonna try to do this, and have a protocol. Because I think we still need that to be able to open it up the right way. But I just really don't see that keeping our short-term rental thing is really gonna help do nothing but cause confusion right now. Because we went back and said that the government said, even though we didn't have it, the government still got it. So, I think it's just so much confusion in that. So I would say we get rid of everything, exactly what Kenneth said. We go back to the state, and then we abide by the state rules and regulations until we meet again and say, this is the way we want to try to open the things back up when the state regulates it. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but I second it.
Okay. Am I taking that as a second?
Yeah,
to-
second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the floor to remove any restrictions that the Swain County Board of Commissioners has placed during this COVID-19 situation. Is that fairly clear, and am I correct? Okay. So motion and a second on the floor. All of those who agree, please.
Could we
raise
have a
your-
little, could we have a discussion time on the motion in a second, please?
Well, I thought we did, but yes. we
Well,
can.
see, no,
Go ahead.
no, I didn't want to interrupt while other people were talking.
No, that's fine.
So, I'm having a hard time figuring out the distinction between what the motion is and what option one is.
Option one keeps in place the Third Amendment Declaration, which deals with the Swain County's restrictions on short-term rentals until phase 2 of the governor's plan becomes effective. So that's maintaining that in place as one.
But in the scheme of things, it doesn't, if we're following the governor's orders, it doesn't even, what difference does this motion make and option one make when it comes to the scheme of what we're following, if we're following the governor's orders?
Well, I think that from the emergency committee's recommendations is that remain in effect until such time as phase 2 commences. For the purposes of, I guess, and you may be able to explain it better than me, but what your purpose is. In effect, the third amendment to the third declaration, which is the short-term rentals, where it's clearly defined, it is more restrictive than the governor's in that it sets out precisely what can't be open except for essential travel purposes. And it's different than the governor's orders on that. But I think the effect is, it reaches the same effect, it just adds more to it. All right.
Yeah. The reason for leaving that in is just to continue to restrict movement of out-of-state and out-of-state folks coming to Swain County for a period of 2 more weeks, basically. And again, I'll go back to why it was in place originally. There was a great outcry in the county of grocery store shelves being empty and lots of out-of-state folks here in the county that could possibly be bringing this virus to us sooner than it might have. And we're talking about 2 weeks.
Roger, did you get an answer to your question?
I think so. I mean, I think I've grasped it, but I was a little bit confused about the difference, and what we're saying is we're just going to keep our little bit extra restrictions on. It's confusing me because the extra restrictions we have is not.
There are 2 restrictions in place at the moment, the county's restriction and the governor's. I mean, they're both there, they're both saying the same thing.
Well, no, let me stop. That's where I'm confused, because we're a little, what more is our saying?
The governor's orders are ambiguous when it comes to leisure travel.
I
And
think
the
that this
definition.
is yours, Swain County's, clearly sets out and defines what is being restricted, and I can read it to you or I can pass it around.
No.
But it essentially allows for essential business travel for all hotels, motels. They have to register with Kevin or have some accommodations related to assuring that they're here for business travel. And the governor's impliedly says there's no leisure travel until that's raised, even though it doesn't say that. So yours is more easily, the interpretation is more easily recognized, in my opinion. And like I say, I've had conferences with at least all of our surrounding counties, county attorneys a couple times over the past 2 weeks, and everybody's kind of in the same boat where we believe that his order does restrict that, but the ones that we've put in place are clearer, so that it's more easily understood by the general public.
Thank you.
My statement saying they're saying the same thing was not correct, but they get us to the same place. And they're even in the same place.
Okay, let me just ask you, David, very quickly, and it's not to question Kenneth, but the motion that Kenneth has made removes everything. Are we still in the same boat once we take a vote, yes or no, up or down? If we vote yes, what have we removed that Swain County still needs in place?
The governor's order covers what we need.
Okay. If that's a statement, I can hear that and I can accept that.
Okay, can I add one further statement to it?
Okay, sure.
From the beginning, Alice and I have obviously pushed the most stringent things that we can do to protect the people of Swain County. So, you know, we're way on that side of it, and you know, other people are way on the other side of it. So, do I fully expect to compromise or something different? Absolutely, we understand that. But again, as long as we're here, we're going to be telling you the most stringent, the most protective actions that the county can take for the citizens.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Any other discussion? Did you say, would you?
I didn't say.
Oh, okay. All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. That today we vote as the Board of Commissioners for Swain County to remove any restrictions that we as a county have placed, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm probably saying this more for my own explanation than anything. From the order of the state regarding COVID-19, any restrictions that Swain County put on that will be hereby removed.
Yes.
Okay. And we have a second. Okay. That motion and second is on the floor. If you agree with it, not if you agree with it. If you want to vote for it, please raise your right hand. If you are opposed, you will vote in just a second. Okay, those in favor? Okay, we've got 3 voting for it. Those opposed to that? Okay, and 2 opposed. Your motion carries. Okay, next step, is that it?
That's it.
Okay, you are all familiar with the discussion, and so if there's nothing else, I
One
will
more.
entertain a motion to adjourn.
Sorry, well, do have
Okay,
one more
We do
thing.
have one other
Yeah,
thing. Okay.
so we will get you a 5th supplemental, which basically will terminate all the other restrictions. So I'll get that to you.
And please list them, would you please?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
I've got a couple of questions.
Oh,
It's
okay.
pertaining to this
Sure.
that people are asking. I think it'd be good to have them here. The county offices are all open now. Some people are asking, are all by appointment, or how's that working? How are you opening those back up?
We're still by appointment only.
Okay.
And that'll probably be changing next week. So we'll open the doors back up.
County, when we open parks and county playgrounds, and those pavilions and things are to reopen under the governor's order, are we going to be responsible for sanitizing and cleaning? Is there a plan being developed for that when those type of things open?
Yeah, well, go ahead.
There's guidelines on the CDC website about that. And if I remember correctly, even playgrounds, you don't have to sanitize playgrounds per se. There's guidelines on that, so Jim can just look at that and go by those recommendations.
But there will be steps for them to take to clean.
Yeah, it'll list what needs to be
Somebody asked,
cleaned
are
or
they going to
how.
clean, or are we going to expect the people that use it to clean before they use it?
Right, there'll be recommendations, like I said, from
Okay.
CDC, and they'll just follow those.
Okay, that's just some of the questions. The other, give a shout out to Mr. Green and his maintenance. There was some issues with the walking trail that seem to be taken care of. I did have somebody point out on the trail yesterday, we got good signage there. It does read both, it's on both sides. There's a little confusing, the arrow sign can be seen from either side, it's faded through. It would be nice if they could back one side off, because we're passing people in different directions. Well, the arrow says the one way's backwards, but they don't see that, they see the arrow. So I would ask if they could maybe redo that particular sign so it could only be seen from one side. But they've done a good job on getting it back up, and a few people are using it. Thank you.
I just want to say, anybody else have anything? I think we need to, I think you're right, Danny, I think we need to give a shout out to everyone who has been walking with us through this process, and even those who have sent us letters and emails and all of that kind of stuff. We want to thank them as well, because it helps us look at all sides, and so we definitely want to give a shout out to David and Allison, Sheriff and your crew, and Superintendent and his crew, because they've worked through some not clear direction, and so we appreciate that very much, and so I do want to give a shout out for that. Any other thing that anybody else wants to say, David?
Just one thing out, and we have had an email, I think we've all gotten from a Mr. Whitener, asking about having a committee to help to see how the reopening would look like. I know we have a committee that's working on that diligently. Do y'all feel like it would be helpful to form some type of committee to help with how that would look? I know there's going to be, we're going to have guidelines, and we're going to have to follow those. I know, but I'm just asking, do you think that would be helpful? This person stated that counties around us have, you know, they're already having committees, and how things are going to look when we open, how we're going to, you know, do things. I'm just asking, do y'all think that'd be helpful to have a committee to help with that?
We've already come up with certain guidelines for like the retail industry. So they're at the health department now. We're working on like the cabin rentals and things like that, with certain guidelines. And I think you're taking it from the CDC, mostly from the CDC recommendations. So we are working on that part of it. And that's all through the health department.
Well, I think it's good to let them know that that's in place, because there is some concern from some that we're sitting back and we don't have any plans whatsoever about opening things up and how things are going to look when it opens up.
In forming your guidelines, if I may, I would just like to say that I thought when you guys met with a bunch of people to help you formulate your recommendations to us, I thought that was a good thing. And I hope that that's not the last time you do that, as you begin formulating all of the other things, that you meet with various individuals from the community, so that you have that input as well. So.
I would like to make the statement also that I'm not opposition, and I don't want it to look like our boards. To me, it was all just wording. The options are, as Kenneth says, they're all the same. We don't have to say an option one, but the wording to me in option one seemed better, which is the reason for not voting. But at the end of the day, it basically says the same thing.
It's the same.
Except for our clarification would have stayed on until the phase 2. But I'm good with that. But I want to let people know I'm not sitting here being opposed to what we're doing.
No, thank you. And you have to make your decisions from the input you get, as well as from your own understanding of what's going on. So no problem with that. Kevin, did you want to say anything?
I think we just need to clarify, because I know there's people watching, that what we done today got rid of what we had put in, but did not alleviate the governor's order. It did not take away from the governor's order. The governor's order still stands. Short-term rentals, we'll talk about that real quick, are still in effect. the ordinance or the order on short-term rentals is still in effect through Governor Roy Cooper's orders through the state. What we did was alleviated what we had, and when short-term rentals start back, it'll happen under the state's mandate instead of the county's mandate, right? Does that sound right?
It does, it's just a little bit different language than we had.
Okay.
That's where I need a little clarification. I mean, I'm hearing one thing from sitting here and hearing something else now. Are people able to rent short-term rentals?
No, sir.
No.
Well, you just pulled back everything that the county had passed.
Right, but the governor's order,
Supersedes ours.
from my understanding, says no at this point.
It's Executive Order 121, which is the stay-at-home order for the governor, and basically, we could be here for 2 hours discussing every component of that. But it does eliminate all non-essential travel, which means the only reasons to travel in North Carolina are for essential business purposes. And someone renting a short-term cabin or a motel or hotel in North Carolina, in my interpretation of the governor's order, cannot until that stay-at-home order is lifted or modified, because it is for essential business purposes only as far as traveling.
Thank you. Mayor, do you have a comment that you'd like to make? Okay.
I got one other thing
Okay.
pertains to this subject. You know, David mentioned a little while ago about EMS and the amount of people that we are transporting between our hospital and Harris. We are going to be ramping up that service and adding a couple more medics for that purpose. Just want to let you forewarn you that is happening. I think one of the ambulances is set up to go for COVID patients. It's they've kind of wrapped everything up, I believe. But anyway, I just want to let you know that. And also at 11:30, when the governor comes on, one of the other things he's going to probably mention, I think it's in his press release, is that there was a stimulus package money came for the state, and so we are in line to get some money, but we have to justify it between now and I think in October. So there's going to be a lot more expenses, especially with enforcement, with health department, and with EMS, that we're going to be supplementing some of these funds to take care of those extra duties that we're doing now. So did want to let you know that. So you'll be seeing another budget amendment coming in probably at the regular meeting next week.
Okay. And before we adjourn, I guess the next meeting should be talked about, and I think that we go back to our regular scheduled board meetings, commissioners meetings. Okay, any questions on that?
Which meeting, the second Thursday will be our first meeting.
Right, yes. Unless something dire happens and we have to call another emergency meeting. Okay? Now, as I started about an hour ago, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. And no one wants to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn this meeting.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor to adjourn. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Carried unanimously. Very good.